All right, time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now and watch. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and we'll win real money with their sports books along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Geoff Mosher on a Mosher Monday edition of Football at 4. And he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline as big news from the Eagles today. What's the impact of Doug Pederson testing positive for the coronavirus as we welcome the birthday boy, Geoff Mosher. What's up, pal?
Hello, fellas. How you doing?
Happy birthday to you first.
Appreciate it.
Everything is well on our end. So much going on. The impact of this, though, I mean, it almost seems now like in sports, okay, people are getting it. We don't know what it means. But Doug Pederson did speak today. What is kind of the ripple effect of losing your head coach? You know, what are they doing? Is there a huge impact to this right now?
Well, I think that it would be more impactful if it were one of these teams that had a new head coach who was trying to implement in a very short time and with a lot of restrictions, a new culture, a new scheme. But you have a coach here in Doug Pederson who, yes, they've had some coaching change this offseason, but he's got an assistant head coach in Deuce Staley who has been here for quite a long time, predating Doug, actually. He's got Jim Schwartz, who's been here for as long as he's been here. And so right now there's not a whole lot of on-field coaching that you can do outside of doing walkthroughs. And so we had a Zoom session with Doug Pederson today, and he has told us that he was feeling great and fine, and that he had recently wrapped up his normal day's worth of individual and group Zoom sessions that he continues to be able to do and will continue to be able to do while he is away, and that anything done on the field from a walkthrough standpoint for the next, I think, 2 weeks it is, can be led by Deuce Staley, but Deuce and Doug will be in constant communication also. So it's almost like Deuce is carrying out the blueprint and the game plan that Doug has already put in place. And Doug said that he, did a lot of the planning, contingency planning during the summer for cases like this. Probably didn't assume it would be him, but he certainly had plans in store. So I'm not trying to sit here and sugarcoat the situation. He's obviously got COVID and he's not with the team and he's away in quarantine. However, there's just not a whole lot when we think about team preparation for the season and we think about training camp and your practices and your one-on-ones and things like that. None of that stuff is going on right now. So there's really not a lot that he could do even if he was there. And there's not a lot that he's not able to do because what he's done, for the last, week or so, a lot of that has been socially distant courses or Zoom sessions.
Right. So essentially, even though he has the coronavirus, he hasn't been around any of the players, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure of whether or not he's had interaction with players or not, and how much time he has spent in the building as opposed to not. But, there was that report that one staff member, Press Taylor, also got sent home just to be sure, right, that he doesn't also have the coronavirus. And Doug said today he still thinks the building is a very safe place. So I believe Doug has been in the building, but I just don't know how close he has been to players because they aren't doing anything outside of strength and conditioning and walkthroughs.
Right, because the report was that he believes he contracted the virus outside of the facility, which would suggest that he has been in the facility, but that he believes he got it from someone outside of the facility.
Right. And he wouldn't comment today on where he might have gotten it or who he might have gotten it from. And I think he's doing that for a number of reasons, privacy first and foremost for both himself and whoever he might have been around. But yes, so the answer is, it's, if you're going to, and he even made this point, if there's going to be a time of the year where your head coach contracts COVID, better it to be now than sometime in the season or a week before or playoffs or not. And again, not to say he can't, again, I don't know enough data on whether or not you can get this thing twice or not, or how it works. But at least if you're going to be out for anything, it's better to do it now than have to be out later.
We've been talking about what if you lose your starting quarterback for a big game in this season due to COVID-19. Well, this is the first time I've sat here and go, whoa, what if you lose the head coach when you're up against, say, the Dallas Cowboys and you got to throw in somebody with little experience to start calling the game and calling the plays?
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. Obviously right now Deuce Staley takes over. He is the assistant head coach. You wonder how this would be if it were, say, a Week 4 game. I believe Deuce Staley would still have that title, of course, of assistant head coach, and I do believe he'd carry on the message. But Press Taylor is in charge of the passing game, and that's a big thing on what the Eagles do. And remember, if Doug or another coach were to be gone, it's not like they're extinct or wiped out. You can talk to them and game plan with them just virtually. So the key here is Jim Schwartz, who has he's not like, to me, like the co-head coach. He's going to coach the defense. He's going to preside over the defense. And I'm sure he's going to be leaned upon for a little bit more leadership and just kind of expertise in day-to-day operations than he would normally be.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And I guess another question that came up today that was talked about a while back, and that was, this weekend there were 2 starting quarterbacks that ended up on the COVID list. And this was something that was brought up a couple of months ago about the possibility of quarantining a quarterback, given the importance of that position, and having somebody kind of, put away in a bunker almost at all times, so that person is not really working out or doing anything, that he's just studying and prepared in the event that Carson Wentz got coronavirus, Jalen Hurts has been quarantined. Is that something that's a possibility?
Well, Doug was asked about that on his conference call today, and he said that he has been having ongoing discussions with all of his offensive staff about that and plenty other contingency plans, and he didn't rule it out. He said it was something to be considered. I got the feeling the way he said it that he really doesn't want to do that, but if push comes to shove and they really talk about it and they think it's that important, that they might change their mind and do it. Now, I don't know, when you say a true quarantine, even inside the NovaCare complex, does that mean Carson Wentz is going to be separate from everybody and not even on the field or doing any drills? No, I don't think that, at least from what I took from it, that's not the response. It's just more that when they go inside for their meetings, do you need to have all 3 quarterbacks and the position coach in the same room, even though they're now supposed to be socially distanced even within the room? Is it just smarter to have Carson in his own room having a Zoom session with his instructor and they watch tape together? There's so much technology that enables you to do that now, where you're just taking that extra safeguard and extra precaution because it's your starting quarterback.
Right. And instead of saying then having all 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the meeting room with the quarterback coach, maybe the quarterback coach meets with Wentz one-on-one. Is that what you're basically saying that he's kind of saying?
That's what I was insinuating from it. Plus, there's also other meetings that the quarterback's involved with. Sometimes they have offensive meetings where you have the entire offense in a room. You've got the quarterback center meetings that take place a lot, which are a lot about snap counts and things like this. Well, that's usually on the road when you're preparing for a really loud place. The Eagles and no team will have to worry about that, it seems, this year, as far as silent counts and things like that. But you do want your center quarterback snap exchange to be perfect, and you do have your quarterback and center reading, watching tape a lot to read defenses. They want to know where the blitzes are coming from. That's another example of a meeting that a center can be in one room, a quarterback can be in another, a coach can be in another, and they can share the film that they're watching, doing screen shares and things like that, where they don't have to all be joined together in the same classroom.
Can you see a scenario where something like Miami and St. Louis, when it comes to baseball, is going to happen in football, where there's just such extreme outbreaks throughout all of these locker rooms to the point where they might have to start canceling games? Some teams might not get the 16 games in, and then they got to figure out a way to make the divisions work in terms of who wins the division?
Yeah, I think I can see that scenario happening. the NFL seems to think that it's not going to have issues that MLB is having. And they make a decent point. There's not as much travel, and you have a week in your own bubble, unlike baseball where you're kind of going from town to town here. You do have pretty much the entire week in your own bubble, your city bubble, your headquarters bubble, before you have to go ahead and travel and play a team or play a team at home. So it's not. I would still say that the outbreak that you're seeing in baseball, I don't think is as likely to happen in the NFL. But at the same time, I wouldn't dismiss the idea that it could happen. All it takes is somebody either doing something that they're not following the right protocol, or just happenstance getting it somehow, and then bringing it into the locker room unknowingly, and it can get spread around pretty quickly.
Right. Wasn't there the thought that teams might travel in on the game day, play the game, and leave right after the game so that they're not staying in a hotel?
I've heard that. And, Mike, I got to tell you, I think that's really difficult. And, I mean, I get it that the whole year is going to be difficult anyway. And I know that for West Coast trips, they wouldn't do that. But even if you were flying to, say from Philly to Carolina, let's say they were playing, I'm just trying to – I forget everybody on the schedule, right? You're really going to fly in early morning Sunday and then go right to the field and get ready. I mean, that's difficult. I really think that favors the home team, even without the fans, a lot. I would think it would make more sense to maybe just fly really late the night before. I mean, you know how you feel after a flight, your knees, your legs. I know these guys have better amenities on their airplanes, but they're bigger guys. They're huge. So I'm not sure it's the greatest thing for their health perspective to have them fly. What do you leave? 7 a.m. You land somewhere at 9 or 10. And that's the time usually you're getting to the field for a 1 o'clock game. So unless they wanted to change the game times and push them back to later in the afternoon, which I'm not sure they want to do, I'm not sure flying in that morning of is such a great idea.
Here's a crazy scenario. Do you think it would be possible if they reschedule the entire schedule so it's less travel across the country and you stay more kind of like going back to baseball, the AL East plays the NL East and then the AL Central plays the NL Central, things like that? Would that make sense if it limits, flying across the country and things like that?
Yeah, I'm going to say this about a lot of these type of hypotheticals, Hunter. I think that they're not on the table until they have to be. Meaning, I think the NFL just wants to do everything it can to play it out as normally as possible, understanding that it's really not going to be normal, understanding that some concessions are going to have to be made along the way. I mean, we're already talking about no fans. At one point it was like, oh, you can have a couple of thousand. And now I think the Raiders today announced that they're going to have no fans. I think we're all headed. We understand that there will be no fans. But I think that's how the NFL wants to function here. Is to kind of react to what's going on a week-to-week basis and only make changes like that, radical changes, if they absolutely have to.
A couple things on the field I want to get your take on. I know on Friday Jim Schwartz spoke, and he mentioned there's going to be a different look potentially. It seemed like he insinuated anyway, a different look to at least the defense with Darius Slay. Did you get the feel that we're going to see Slay kind of moving around on the defensive side of the ball and following the opposing team's best wide receiver?
Yeah, Jim's definitely going to do that. He finally has somebody he can do it with. I don't think he's had a cornerback that he could even consider doing that with since he got here. And his first set of corners were, I think, Leotis McKelvin and Nolan Carroll, if I remember correctly. So Darius Slay is easily the best corner he's had, and he will travel with him. However, Jim made it very clear that, one, when you do that, when you travel like that, you do kind of give away your defense. If they want to find out if you're in man-to-man defense, all they got to do is motion a receiver that Slay is following, and if he goes with him, then they know it's man. And so you've given away some of your defense, and Jim does not like giving away his defense. It's a pretty simple defense to begin with, so he doesn't want to give too many tells. And secondly, a lot of receivers, and I've seen the Falcons do this with Julio Jones. I've seen the Texans do this with Hopkins. They'll call plays to have their best wide receiver function out of the slot, A, to just, mix it up a little bit, show a different look, and B, to get that top corner who's following into the slot. So now you have a slot receiver who has to flex to the outside. And if you have a pretty decent number 2 wide receiver, like a lot of teams do, you can take advantage of that matchup. You say, all right, maybe my number one receiver is going to be smothered here in the slot, but now I have a nice matchup on the outside with my secondary receiver against a smaller slot corner who's just not going to be able to defend that jump ball or that back shoulder pass. So I think when you see a team like the Packers, I know the Eagles play the Packers this year, they have Devontae Adams. But after Devontae Adams, they get pretty thin as far as great talent at wide receiver position. So that's a team that I could see maybe you follow, and you're not worried about Avonte Maddox versus the number 2 wide receiver. But when they play the Cardinals this year, who have Hopkins, they have Christian Kirk, they have a couple of pretty good wide receivers on that team, Larry Fitzgerald, I don't know if you're going to see as much traveling. I think you have to play a little bit straighter.
We talked about this a little bit on Friday with Andrew DeCecco, and if Sidney Jones was to win the outside corner role, and that means that Avonte Maddox would probably not be in the slot because Roby Coleman is, what does that mean for Avonte Maddox? Because could you argue he's too good to not be out on the field at times?
Yes, I think you could argue that. I mean, he's not a superstar, but he's a really good player to have in your secondary, and he's versatile, so that's a good thing. So if by chance Sidney Jones were to win that job, and I suppose in 2020 anything can happen, so we can entertain that thought. I don't think that Maddox just gets banished to the bench. I mean, I still think Roby Coleman plays a lot of slot, but I think you would see Avonte play a hybrid role. I mean, we've seen Corey Graham play that role. We've seen that's the role they kind of are envisioning right now for Jalen Mills. Plus, you know that there's going to be an injury somewhere that'll necessitate getting him on the field. There always is. So they will find ways in sub packages to get him on the field and use him advantageously.
Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, the new ITB pod is up. And one of the things is, Miles Sanders' role. That was something else that was brought up on the Friday coordinators, that we kind of got a more insight that it sounds like they are going to get away from the running back by committee. Did you get that vibe?
I mean, I've been saying that for almost 7 months now, that I felt like ever since they drafted Miles Sanders, that was the beginning of the turning point for Doug and his running game, and that he was now finally going to get himself a 3-down running back. And yeah, I think Deuce Staley confirmed that. He said, I'm not worried about monitoring his touches. He said, this is a guy you just give the ball and go. He's young. He's in his second year. He proved a lot as a rookie. So why would you take the ball out of his hands just to say, hey, I've got this nice committee going? So it's just not something. I know that Doug has never gone any other way but committee, and I've heard the argument that this is what Doug likes and prefers because that's his history. But that's like me saying that Andy Reid's history, if I were to judge Andy Reid's history of wide receivers after his first 4 or 5 years coaching, all you would think about is James Thrash and Todd Pinkston. But look at Andy Reid's history of wanting good wide receivers in the last 10 years, whether it was Deshaun Jackson or Jeremy Maclin or Tyreek Hill or Sammy Watkins or now McCole Hardman. He likes really good, fast wide receivers. He just did a bad job earlier in his year of his career of being able to get them. And I think the same applies for Doug Pederson. Yes, he's had a committee, but look at the hand he was dealt every year. He never really had a 3-down running back who has Miles Sanders' type of capability. So now that he does, I think you'll see him use Miles Sanders like that 3-down running back, and you won't see the committee approach. I still think you'll see other running backs used. Yeah. I mean, there always was, but just it's going to be like 2-1.
Yep. Good stuff there. Real quick, I know that Goodwin opted out last week, and that kind of was news, later on that week. I wasn't here, and Alshon placed on the PUP list. With Goodwin out, Alshon not ready to go, do you feel that both Watkins and Hightower both make the because it seemed like before they were kind of in a battle with each other, or maybe with Goodwin, but how does Goodwin opting out kind of change the wide receiver training camp all of a sudden?
Yeah, you can say it opens up the door for a Watkins or a Hightower a little bit more, because I do believe Goodwin would have made the team. He's a veteran. He has speed. You can't count on rookies. So if Deshaun were to get hurt, and the history is that Deshaun's going to miss a game or two at least, then Goodwin would have been a nice option to slide into that Z and at least give you a vertical stretch presence, even if he's not going to catch a lot of passes, kind of like Torrey Smith did a couple of years ago. So with him being out, it certainly opens the door. But I think the door is really more open for Howie now to kind of have to go out and sign another veteran wide receiver. Not a obviously not a big name. There's not a lot of big names out there, and not a lot of money. It would be a 1-year deal. But I think, given the fact that it's going to be tough for rookies of all types of rookies to acclimate this year with this training camp the way it is, it's going to make sense for Howie to get a veteran. And maybe he'll wait a little bit because he wants to give these guys a shot.
Yeah.
The team's always signing guys after the cut down day, and that first 53 is not really the official one. It's usually the one that comes 24 hours later. That's your real 53. So it wouldn't shock me if after cut down day he's looking for a wide receiver to bring in.
All right, so we'll leave you with this for the listeners out there. In some people's mind, they're hearing camp is open, training camp's going, stuff's happening. When will the players actually start to get and report to camp and start getting out on the field?
Well, again, they can get on the field now for walkthroughs. I mean, if you're asking when do they start actually practicing, where there's some kind of competition.
When will camp be right? When will the competition start? Okay, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think August 16th, I believe, is the day for that. So right now they're in a prolonged strength and conditioning phase, and then the next phase will be non-padded practice or non-contact practice, and that's when that starts in a couple of weeks. And then a week after that, they'll put the pads on. So we're still 3 weeks away from kind of legit competition.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, check out the latest edition. They go deeper on some intel on Doug Pederson and more on this Eagles as they get ready for, as you just mentioned, training camp in a couple of weeks. It's technically kind of training camp going on. They're doing a lot of virtual stuff. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Moshe, happy birthday, man.
All right, fellas. Thank you very much.
All right. And the Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com. Win real money with their sports book along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to play.